Teachers of Reddit, what is the strangest thing a child has brought in for show and tell? In the 4th grade I brought in my grandfather. Yup, my grandpa. He told jokes and did these really cool whistling tricks. Looking back on it, that was probably strange. One of my students this year, 2nd grade, brought in a cassette tape. Not to play, just to show. Nobody knew what it was. I had to explain it. I worked at a tech camp last summer and I always enjoyed asking my kids if they knew what the save icon was. Every single week only 1 or 2 in my class of 8 would know. My brother brought in a turkey leg once. Like the claw of a dead turkey. The teacher confiscated it because she was creeped out by it and my dad had to go in and get it. He was pulling the tendon to make the claw open and close a bit. That was apparently too much for the teacher. My father used to hunt. He would cut the skin of the claws off at the joint and pull hard to remove the tendons from the drumstick. My brother and I loved pulling the tendons to make the claws open and close. We would grab each other's clothes or hold things. One child forgot to bring something once. Found this out later, so he blew his nose in a Kleenex, put it in his pocket, and showed us his boogers. His improvisational and planning skills will take him far in life. When I was in grade 6 I brought in a photo of my grandfather shaking hands with Winston Churchill. My grandfather was in politics, low level, and met him. I didn't think it was that cool but my dad promised me it would be worth bringing in. Nobody in my class cared at all, but my teacher called in other teachers to show them and they all asked me a million questions. No idea where the photo went. My grandmother saw a suffragist hit Winston Churchill with her umbrella. I taught outdoor education for a few years and one of the activities I would do with the younger groups was to have them find something in nature and use my stash of trail guides to learn something cool about the thing to tell the rest of the class. One kid found an eyeball. At first I thought he had gotten some mossy rock out of the creek, until he started twirling it around by the optic nerve like some kind of horrifying nunchakus. I had my aunt for a teacher so I always brought in embarrassing pictures of her for show and tell. The 80s were bad to her but good to me, especially when the principal sat in. This feels so backwards to what I would expect. There was a kid in my kindergarten class that did the full choreography to Bye Bye Bye. He was obsessed with NSYNC and after 3rd grade we weren't allowed to talk to him about the boy band because his counselor said so. He also hated me because I liked Backstreet Boys. I guess he could take no more. A child in a nearby classroom brought in an object and told his teacher that he had found a cute little whistle at home and put it into his mouth to demonstrate. The teacher recognized the object as an applicator for a feminine product used to control yeast infections. While the children went to a special class, the new toy disappeared from the child's desk. The teacher did call the mother to let her know what had come to school. I would love to hear that conversation. In high school, we had some sort of fundraising thing where we would donate money toward a specific staff member, and whoever had the most donations had to kiss a turkey around Thanksgiving. All the staff thought it was going to be a fake turkey, but a teacher that I knew really well who disliked another staff member came to me and asked me to bring in a turkey from my dad's farm. She planned to donate a pretty good chunk of change to switch the vote in her favor. It also just happened the whole fundraiser was her idea. Fast forward a few weeks, it's the vote counting day. Sure enough, the staff member she disliked got picked. It was interesting, the look on his face as I marched a turkey out of its cage and up onto a cafeteria table. Totally unplanned, except between myself and the organizing teacher. Everyone was absolutely stunned at the live bird gobbling at them as it trotted around like it owned the place. And yes, he did actually kiss it, as did several other students. Surprisingly, it didn't try to peck the incoming human faces. It was a really chill bird. My elementary school art teacher would always bring a live turkey to class with her around Thanksgiving. It was pretty cool, and she was well known for doing it. In the 3rd grade, a guy in my class brought a jock cup, the kind to protect your nuts, which if you didn't know has holes to help breathing. Well, a girl raised her hand and asked how do you drink out of it. The teacher stood up and had him put it away without explaining it. I took my fox terrier to school for show and tell. Teacher was cool with it and I ended up keeping him at school with me for the whole day. Best day ever. This is more of a show and stop telling. I did my student teaching in a first grade class. A police officer came in one day to talk to the kids, just like a fun thing. He was showing the kids his tools and he holds up the handcuffs, and a little girl in the back shouts out, "My mommy has those on her nightstand. I keep mine in a drawer. WTF." Not show and tell, but in preschool, we were allowed to bring movies from home to watch as a group in the morning, and if your movie was the one picked out of the few brought in, you were the cool kid of the day basically. I decided to bring in this movie cause it had pretty girls with swords on the cover. Turns out, I brought some weird lesbian hentai that belonged to my dad. They gave it back to me to take home and told me not to bring it back again. In first grade I brought in the skull of a dead animal that got hit by a train on the tracks behind our house. It still had a little bit of grey fur left attached, and I told the class I hoped it was an alien and pointed out how it didn't look like a cat or raccoon. My teacher made me wash my hands. Pro tip from a kid that also loves skulls of dead animals. Dead animals I found, not killed. Throw the sucker into an ant's hill and come back the next day. Will be pure white and shiny like a new skull. Well, a new skull without skin and crap. When I was in 3rd grade, this girl brought a human skull in. She said her grandpa got it from Nam or World War II. I don't really remember. It freaked everyone out, but I remember thinking it was cool as crap. My son did a sign in preschool for his show and tell. Politely explained that butthole is a bad word and you shouldn't say it. In our defense, he was allowed to ask me what any word meant, so he would know which were bad words he shouldn't say and why. It never occurred to him that it would cause a stink. He honestly thought he was being helpful. Cause a stink. Hahaha. I'm not a teacher, but I worked in an after-school program. This 2nd grader comes in after show and tell day and hands me something, which I take without thinking about it. It's like a dried, speckled piece of pink paper. I ask, "What is this?" "My placenta." What the fuck you just handed me your placenta? My super calm response though was, "Oh, cool. Why don't we put it in a bag and put it in your backpack for safekeeping?" Gross. Super gross. All of my children, at one time or another, brought in our Great Dane. The teachers loved it, because the whole class could pet her at once. The Dane also appeared in many a math class, counting her spots, and for the letters B, for big, and E, obvious. Dobvious. Not a teacher, but in 2nd grade a kid showed everyone his prosthetic leg. He proceeded with taking it off and showing us what was underneath. I swear I am not lying. A principal friend of mine called me in stitches one day and said a small kid at his rural school had a big black dildo in his backpack. Luckily it was found by his teacher early in the morning before show and tell. This year, a grade 6 child brought a bird, on a leash, in a backpack to school. The VP found her running through the hallway after it, and the tiny leash around its neck. During recess one day, we couldn't figure out how she got the dang leash on the thing. I never realized how much I wanted a bird on a leash till now. When I was in 1st grade, I forgot to pick something out for show and tell, so in the morning, I panicked. So just so I have something to bring, I asked my dad if he would be my show and tell. He was so excited and happy, he called out of work and went to the basement to grab some stuff. 10 minutes later, he come running up with a weird looking briefcase and told me to get ready for school. He was so excited. He drove me to school, went inside with me and asked when show and tell was. After finding out it wasn't until before lunch, he got a little disappointed, but he went to go get coffee. Time comes around for show and tell and he comes in right as it's my turn. I tell everyone that this is my dad. He raised me, and yeah, then my dad told me to take a seat because he wanted to show everyone something. He opens the briefcase and to my surprise, he brought magic stuff. He put on a show for the whole class and finished up with some cool yo-yo tricks and gave my teacher a bouquet of roses. She ended up blushing and everyone teased her for liking my dad. The whole class was at awe and my classmates wanted him to be at their birthdays. It was great. That's so sweet. He's a good dad. My brother talked my mom into bringing a cow to school for him. We lived in the middle of nowhere. I was probably 4 and my brother was 6. While my brother was at school, my mom put the cow in the front seat of the car and me in the back seat. As we pulled up to school, the cow crapped all over the seat. Good times. Not a teacher, but when I was in 1st or 2nd grade I brought my baby sister for show and tell. She had just been born and I was excited to be a big brother. We're 7 years apart. I think that's pretty weird. I had just had a medical circumcision at age 6, so I got up in front of the class and whipped out my dong to show the class my awesome stitches. Boy, I was a confident kid. Guy in my bio class brought in 2 Vibrators, 4 lovebirds and a pair of skinks. He insisted the birds' wings were clipped, but as soon as he let them out they flew up into the rafters 15 feet above us, where they sat until facilities arrived with a ladder. I work with small birds like that. Clipping wings means jack and crap for little ones. I tried to bring my goldfish. Unfortunately, I didn't tell anyone I wanted to bring him and tried to take him out of the tank with my hands. My parents caught me before mine died. My sister that shared the tank with him, on the other hand, wasn't so lucky. He was so little, said Lenny. I was just playing with him, and he made like he's gonna bite me, and I made like I was gonna smack him, and I done it, and then he was dead. When I was in kindergarten I brought cheesy broccoli into show and tell, because it was my favorite thing that my mom made to eat and I wanted to share it with everyone. I was really excited to and helped her prepare it the morning of and thought everyone would think it was cool I brought something everyone could eat instead of my favorite toy. The rest of the class was not as excited as me and no one, except the teacher and I think maybe one other kid, ate any of it. I was a bit disappointed that nobody liked it, but at the same time was happy because it meant more for me. Looking back, it was a really weird thing to bring, but I was also a really strange kid. When I was in 3rd grade we had cut an enormous tree down from the backyard. The tree removal people had found a pretty big bird's nest with eggs at the top, and since there was nothing they could really do about destroying the tree it sat in, I brought it into school. However, it wasn't even show and tell. I just walked in carrying a giant thing wrapped in a garbage bag and set it down on the back table without saying a word. It was kinda cool, but that one mean for no reason a swad kid that everyone had in their class at one point or another walked up and squeezed all the freaking eggs and wiped his hand on my shirt. I think he was jealous. I'm looking at you, Aaron. You douche canoe. Aaron is such a bungholio. When I was in 1st grade, I didn't tell anyone. I just put my cap gun in the cargo pocket of some camo pants I was wearing, along with cowboy boots, because I was a freaking G. When it was my turn to go up to show and tell, I just walked to the front of the class, pulled out the cap gun and started shooting it. The teacher took it away from me and told me to sit down and that I wasn't supposed to bring stuff like that to school. It was 1991. Different times, man. Today I'd have probably been expelled. I brought in a cap gun to show my friends. It was modeled after a Glock and I had taken the orange cap off. This would have been grade 6 or 7 around 1998. The principal told me I could have it back at the end of the day and it was not an appropriate toy to bring to school. When I was in elementary school I used to bring in my dad for show and tell. My old man is like 6 feet and at the time was pretty swole since he worked heavy construction. Thing was, both my parents were certified rescue divers, so they had like 6 sets of scuba gear. Dad loved it. He got an excuse to take 5 hours off of work and I got the awesome satisfaction of seeing everyone's face when this huge butt man in full scuba gear awkwardly flops through the door making that awesome sound that BCs and regulators make. God, my dad is cool. When I was in preschool, I brought my Lion King elephant graveyard playset. I thought it was awesome, but it was missing pretty much every piece other than the base, so I probably looked pretty stupid. I'm sure those 2 to 4 year olds were judging you so hard. This one is me. I brought my dad to show and tell. Not strange, but no one I have ever known brought their parent to show and tell. Little did we know, Uank 54 hated the living crap out of show and tell and said frick you Mrs. Jenkins, IT's career debut. One of my students brought in a horse show crab shell that she found. Not terribly weird, but she did wrap it up in a box with Christmas wrapping, which was kind of strange. One kid in my class brought a freaking tractor. We all went out back, and every single kid wanted to ride on it. They were P when they couldn't. They lived close and the dad drove it. I'm not a teacher, but the kid First grade, Mr. Palmer's class at Cernsen Elementary in Kerdalinid, 1979. My young mother had a side job. She was a bartender waitress by trade, as a mud wrestler, you know, bikinis, mud, girl on girl writhing and play fighting. She would bring home trophies. I was so proud of her. She won all the time. I took her trophies and winning very seriously. So, I thought I should share that my 23-year-old mother kicked butt at mud wrestling and earned giant trophies. The one I picked to share was extra special because it had dried mud splat on it. Needless to say, Mr. Palmer in the classroom didn't share my same enthusiasm to the trophy. My mom was mortified. I'm still proud of her. Not a teacher, but when I was in 5th grade, my elementary school had show and tell in all grades. A kid brought in his Star Wars collection. He was very excited about every piece. Towards the end he starts saying how his whole family loves Star Wars, even his mom. At that point he reaches into his backpack and pulls out a blow vibrator, the kind that's smooth and metallic looking. He then explained that it's his mom's lightsaber. By then the teacher jumped in front of him and told him to put everything away and go see the principal. The kid had no idea what was going on, but some of the class was laughing their asses off. It also vibrates in the rhythm of Star Wars theme. My cousin brought in moose antlers in kindergarten. Yes, she is Canadian. A moose bit my sister. Not a teacher, but one time my little brother took a rock to show and tell. To be fair, it was a Christmas present from me and my older sister. It was intended as a joke, but he thought it was amazing, so we didn't have the heart to tell him. Probably grew up to be a geologist. When I was a freshman in high school, I had to take a public speaking class. One day, a student decided to bring in a bucket of fish and gut them in front of everyone with a knife. The point of the exercise was to teach the class how to do something. The teacher thought nothing of it and he didn't even get in trouble for bringing a knife to school. That's actually a good idea. I'm not a teacher, and this wasn't for show and tell, but in 7th grade a classmate brought in her dried up umbilical cord. Apparently some people keep these as family heirlooms or something. She took it out of the pouch and it began to crumble. It was gross. I know I am late to this, but my brother brought his 2 hamsters to school for show and tell when he was in 2nd grade. Little did he know Einstein was actually a girl. On the way to school, Einstein gave birth to babies, and when he pulled the cover off of the cage, there was carnage of dead babies in the cage. Einstein had chewed off every single one of the babies' heads. Blood, heads, fur and hamster bedding was covering the cage. The class went ape crap. Einstein was freaking brutal. Most metal show and tell ever. In 5th grade my friend brought in grandfather's military medal and commendation from World War II. I couldn't read them because they were written in German. My great granddad may be old, but he's a huge Wolfenstein fan. He has even got cosplay outfits and everything locked up in his attic. A wind-up toy from the early 20th century that had a offensively stereotypical black man. Big lips, very dark skin, etc. that would both eat a piece of watermelon and pop a boner when you wound it up. When I was in 2nd grade I brought my cat's severed tail in. My mother had accidentally run over his tail with the car. After a couple of weeks, it fell off, leaving him looking like a bobcat. Unfortunately, I forgot that I had it in my messy desk. I found it, stinking and rotting in a baggie at the bottom of my desk on the last day of school. I was so embarrassed that I tried to hide it, but the girl next to me smelled it and called me out on it. When I was a 3-year-old in daycare, I mimed the entire process of making blended margaritas like I did for my parents every Saturday. You should give my kid lessons. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.